asking the players in the shadowed game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shakes. She names the unspoken, the world away.
Okay, folks, wish me luck. I'm on my own today. Sean has some issues with his internet. I sent him a link so he could join by phone if he's able to. We'll see. Thank you, Ash. She's out grocery shopping, but Ash set up the show so that we can continue to do the show because Eddie and I, welcome to Eddie, have something big to put together today. So I'm hoping you all enjoy what we've got. And Mare Bear?
Yes.
Settle in.
Okay.
Settle in because I think what Eddie put together today, based on previous research that I've done, I think what he put together today is just smack dab a boom because it's a major thing. So right now, I am going to put us into the reign of, let's just see what we've got here. And Eddie, as I go talking through this, I'm hoping you join in with what you've got, just so everybody knows what Eddie did. Based on what I've done, I think we've got not only a slam dunk, but there's proof positive of what's going to happen next. And I hope you guys are excited. Look at Mary's face. She's already like, really? Really? You excited?
I always enjoy our time together.
So do I. And I appreciate the time we do have together because, quite frankly, it's been a crazy ride. And I have to tell you, it never occurred to me, I had hoped, but it never occurred to me that my age-old research would be so relevant as it is now. And I'm excited because there are some things that have come out just today that really bring it all home. So I'm going to jump right in if you don't mind. And Eddie, please don't feel like you've got to wait for an intro. Feel like at any time you can jump in. But I'm going to start with a decode that I showed that I had done back in, let me get this so you can see it the best possible.
Oh, by the way, it's nice to meet you, Mary.
So nice to meet. I've heard her talk about you, so I'm very glad I get to meet you.
Just so you know,
really?
Eddie is a member of my Telegram chat. Mm-hmm. We meet every single night and have a conversation. Sometimes Eddie and I have had a contentious conversation, but every single time something great comes out of it. And this is another one of those examples. He had already, when I had presented my 11.3, 11.4, he had already said, I think you're right. But then he was looking at my iridium dig today, and he had an aha moment, which I'm going to let him explain because it was his aha moment. But I'm going to start with, if you look in what you see on the screen is my 11.3, 11.4 decode. 11.3 in the Criminal Resource Manual is the putting together the grand jury instructions and ultimately instructions for the prosecution for holding people accountable for conspiracy, okay? But it gets bigger. And where I stopped, he picked up, and I have now added to it. So I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff that I have today. First of all, 11.3 links to two sequential posts, 3717 and 16, where it says the first indictment unseal will trigger mass population awakening. So trigger means, in other words, once these are two, notice the time, right? They're identical posts, two posted right in a row, 36, 37, 16, and 17. They were posted December 17th, 2019 at 5:03. So that what that portends is that these are two specific indictments that come out at the same time. Okay? You're following. When you start looking at marker 9 and you recognize marker 9 as California, and we were told there was a specific reason why Watch California was given to us, right? And it was election and voter fraud. But we were told to watch California. We are also told that Maricopa County, because it's the only county listed in all of the Q posts, and that's election fraud, but it's also in, Arizona's in the Ninth Circuit. So we know that's election. Okay, you're following. Mm-hmm. So what that's saying is there's another grand jury that's looking at other than election. And today, I believe Eddie and I have connected it. Right, Eddie?
We did.
So in 4621, we're told the placeholder indictments that the first indictment unseal will trigger. Okay. A lot of people didn't give a rip about Kevin Kleinsmith. Kevin Kleinsmith, if you recall, is the guy that changed the email to say that Carter Page is not a federal asset, a confidential human source. Why is that still relevant and why is it still important? Because if you recall, we got the Sussman and Danchenko indictments after this, right? This is from 2020, where Kleinsmith was held accountable for changing that email. He lost his law license. Of course, under the corrupt AutoPen, he got his law license back and he and a few bucks. But nevertheless, Kevin Kleinsmith proved that you can weaponize bias. That he was so TDS inflicted that bias was weaponized, and he changed that email because it was against Trump. And then Sussman proved, if you read that indictment, proved that there's a domestic spy operation or domestic operation going on. How do we know that? When you read the indictment, Sussman was forced to write the Alpha Bank paper. The Alpha Bank paper is the attempt to tie the Trump Tower servers to Russia through Alpha Bank, which the court said this is BS. So it never held. But he was forced to write that Alpha Bank paper, which points to a conspiracy, correct? There's 2 or more people involved. The Danchenko indictment proved that there was a foreign element to that conspiracy, which is an act of war, right? So you've got biased, right? Weaponized bias, a spy operation domestically, which we know is true. And then there's an international component to that operation. This brings us up to the 371 conspiracies, okay? And I'm trying to remember how to do that. I'm just going to go through this. So 11.3 and 11.4 are really important because in the grand jury rule book, right, these are rules for grand juries under conspiracy. First thing the grand jury has to do is determine, did a conspiracy happen, right? And we're talking multiple conspiracies, so that's important. And in 11.4, it's knowledge of and association with other co-conspirators. But remember, we also have an 11.6, which is liability for substantive offense committed by co-conspirators. And it's the Pinkerton charge, which we'll go through here in a little bit. So there's that. What is 11.3? That's determining whether or not a conspiracy actually existed. So the Q post says 11.3 will be made known, right? We're to spread this wide when 11.3 is made known. And what is that? You must decide whether the conspiracy charged in the indictment existed, and if it did, who at least some of its members were. If you find that a conspiracy charge did not exist, then they're not guilty. But it goes on. When you use that instruction, you have to use 11.4, which is knowledge of and association with other conspirators.
That's
because
correct.
In order to have a conspiracy, 2 or more people have to be involved. Okay, so there's 11.3 and 11.4. Remember, 11.3 is Mr. Podesta, which could also be a public official, not just John Podesta. And 11.4 are the co-conspirators with that person. And in the 11.4, it tells the prosecution, you've got to tailor your indictment to give all that information. And it gives 3 conditions. First, the defendant directly conspired with one or more conspirators to carry out at least one of the objects of the conspiracy. 2, the defendant knew or had reason to know that there were other conspirators involved. And the conspirator doesn't have to have even a direct relationship. And 3, the defendant had reason to believe that whatever benefits the defendant might get from the conspiracy were probably dependent upon the entire venture, so the overall conspiracy. And this is going to be important to keep going with, okay? So that led us to understanding 11.4, and these are the instructions that are given to tailor the indictment and any prosecuting documents to the language of those 3 conditions, where they have to spell out as much as possible, not just what the conspiracy is, who was involved, what they sought to gain, how it worked together as a group. Okay, and I'm going to stop there because I'm going to get to 11.6 in a moment. This takes us, of course, to the 2 indictments, right? It will trigger a mass population awakening. Well, the Kleinsmith-Sussman-Danchenko machine didn't trigger that, but we knew the future direction of where we were going with these investigations because of that. What was the future direction? This was a clean out of the weaponized government. So we could tell that from these 3 indictments. Are you following? And I keep looking over at you, and I could look straight at you, but I didn't. So keep that in mind because it still goes on. 923, 371, it's a conspiracy to defraud. Remember, we're look at 3717, 3716. So Eddie says, well, conspiracy to defraud, which is on, in fairness, it is on the first slide, 371, conspiracy to defraud. And that is a general conspiracy statute. So if you look at that, it's if 2 or more persons conspire to either commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States or any agency thereof in any manner for any purpose. Okay? So this is a very broad definition of conspiracy, which a whole lot of stuff fits in when you start thinking about it, right? So we keep going. What is 371? Now, this is interesting. Eddie, I took it a little further from our discussion.
Okay.
Post 371, why did the White House link posted turn up 404 2 days later? Expand your thinking. Do you believe in coincidences? Okay. So what is he referring to? He's referring to that. Okay. What was behind that? Why did that link get cut? Well, look at what it was about. Can you see it? Presidential Executive Order on the establishment of Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. It's from May 11th, 2017. And when that executive order was put out, when that executive order was put out, it immediately went 404 2 days later. So they didn't want you to see that they're looking at election integrity. That was a commission on election integrity. And if you read into it, membership, Vice President shall chair the commission. The mission, consistent with applicable laws, study the registration and voting processes used in federal election. Does this sound like voter lists, voter rolls, right?
Yeah. Well, and he made the comment that they were going to clean the voter rolls no matter if Congress...
No, because it's already an executive order. Congress doesn't have to. He still has this authority.
Right.
This executive order hasn't been rescinded, by the way. It's still active. I pulled the archive, as you can see, it's still very active, because this is from the day it was posted. Now, let me explain something about executive orders. The executive order is drafted. It is signed by the president. We've seen all the signing, right, where he holds up the portfolio with the executive order in it. It then goes through an administrative process, getting tagged, all that stuff that needs to be done with it. And within 2 days-ish, it hits the Federal Register. Once it's on the Federal Register, it has the force of law within the executive branch. Who's accountable to an executive order? Obviously, the executive branch, right? because it's an executive order. But it also, anybody that receives funds from the federal government, banks, contractors, go down the list, they're all accountable to an executive order. It's not just the agencies, but you can bring this into the society. So why can Trump still order a cleansing of the voter rolls? Because states get massive money from the federal government. So you can see that connection, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this executive order is still in play. It's still here.
Okay.
And they're looking at the rules, laws, policies, activities, strategies, and practices that undermine the American people's confidence in the integrity of the voting process. So I'm confident that between Arizona and California, we're going to get a bunch of information that comes out. Pretty confident that there's a major investigation going on with that right now. We've already seen a lot of traffic to that effect.
John Solomon dropped that hint Friday to watch Maricopa this week.
Yes, Maricopa is a big deal because you've got, and so is Fulton County. Fulton County, of course, is not in the 9th district, but Maricopa, there's connections too with Maricopa to cartel and foreign funding, which gets into, this is why Neville Roy Singham had to come out, because there's connections to the PLA, the Chinese army, right? Which is Neville Roy Singham and the billionaire class, okay? And there's also that connection is in the Epstein documents. So I'm going to point that out here in a minute. But what they had to do is point out the vulnerabilities in the voting systems and the voter rolls. What did we find out? That when somebody dies in the United States, the Social Security Administration, the putting a death date in the Social Security Administration doesn't go to the rest of the agencies, remember?
I played a clip of Kennedy talking about that because he said he spent 4 years trying to get that bill passed and he just got it done.
He just got it done. So what that means is all of these entities, all of these states, all of these NGOs that are getting funding, they're using the Social Security number of people that have passed on. And remember, we saw one Social Security number used for 9,000 votes. Remember, we just had that last week. So we've got this integrity issue in our system. And that brings around the whole idea of the voting systems and practices. So what do we know about the machines? We know that they were double counting mail-in ballots. We also know that they changed the electronic vote to remove votes from Trump and give them to Biden. Mm-hmm. So you've got an electronic and you got a mail-in voting issue. And all it does is increase the vulnerability. So that really is important to this story because, like I said, they posted that link, and this is 371, and we're referring to 371 conspiracy. So there's your voting time. I'm sorry.
To add one thing on that is if there's a connection between Maricopa and Fulton. Now, Fulton, if you read the Fulton County report, Fulton County ordered like 1.2 million extra ballots.
Right.
The same thing happened in Maricopa. And what they're doing is they're using those ballots to backfill in. Mm-hmm. You see what? So those are really key, I believe, a key connection there.
Now, yes,
to the two.
And the importance of that, to Eddie's point, when they started altering the vote, they were doing it electronically, but it caused some precincts to overcount the number of voters in that precinct. So you saw spikes where there were more ballots cast than voters registered. And so the electronic piece started to become a problem, and then they started removing votes from Trump, backfilling with these mail-in ballots that were fraudulently filled out and used for Biden.
And that's the reason you have to do that. You have to order so many ballots because, for instance, in Fulton County, mm-hmm. they have over 400 different precincts. Mm-hmm. So you have to order a lot of ballots for different precincts because there's different council members. There's all kinds of different things mm-hmm. on those ballots. So you have to have a lot of orders if you're going to commit this fraud, mm-hmm. to backfill in the counties that you don't want to throw red flags. You see, you don't like. in a strong Republican county that had a low turnout, maybe you could maybe insert 1,000 votes in there. In the Democrat county with a low turnout, you could really inject a lot of votes without throwing red flags. Right. So you need those ballots.
We also know that a lot of the fraud was happening in red counties too, by the way.
It was.
Yep.
Yeah, the majority of the voting fraud was happening. They were using the blue counties because nobody was going to catch it, like you said. You could flip a vote for Biden, nobody would catch it because it was, the media was never want for an opportunity to tell you who was blue, who was red. But in the red counties is where they really caught them. They got caught. So I'm going to go further because as we're looking at this, I remembered class 1 to 99, and I'm going to go into this here in a second. Class 1 to 99 becomes an important thing here. And Eddie, this is where I again took it beyond what you said. Q puts out the 2397. Keep your eye on the ball, midterms and memes. Okay, and he's got a kill box with something classified. POTUS already ordered the D class. Rod Rosenstein pushed back hard, or at least that's what the RR typically stands for. OIG tasked to review, determine sensitive info. OIG works with Huber, important to remember. So in other words, Horowitz, who's the IG for the DOJ, was working with Huber, who was the U.S. attorney in Utah that was made a special counsel. Huber reports directly to Sessions. Sessions appointed him in early 2017. We knew this, okay? He appointed him in 2018. Was the D class already cleared for release? Yes, we know that too now. Was the gambit played by RR to stall and delay post-election, banking on Democrats winning the House? So this post, by the way, is November 3rd, 2018, and they're saying, was this being played to stall until the Democrats won the House in the election? Well, we know there wasn't a red wave and that the Democrats did win the House in the 2018 midterms. So it's a real possibility. There was a stall tactic. POTUS is Air Force One, RR, because what had ended up happening, and we all saw it, Rod Rosenstein took a flight with POTUS on Air Force One, came off that plane with a grin from ear to ear. So we're all going, okay, something else was discussed here. So, and he says it's important to remember that. So something Rod Rosenstein was doing became important and was the subject of a meeting on Air Force One, which, by the way, is one of the most secure skiffs in the country, right? So nobody could hear anything that was said. How do you navigate around installed blockades? Well, first of all, you go up to 60,000 feet with it, right? There's one. And you talk directly with the people in there. So then we get into the Mueller designed to take in evidence, goes down the Mueller list. And Q then tells us in its response 1 to 99, class 1 to 99. This is post 2776. Let me show you how this and this are related. That comes here. Okay, 2776, this is Barta Mueller, and it's, so what we got in 2397, and people that were following me back then know this. In fact, there's people that copied this slide because it was so monumental. 2397 are the answers to the questions in 2776. What was the purpose of investigating to find a crime versus investigating evidence of a crime? And it's the very first line of the Mueller design to take in evidence needed to expose the deep state. So when you get back to, was it designed to stall until the midterms? The answer is absolutely. Why? Because if you stall until the midterms, then you get to see the criminality in play. And you can go down all of these. The second question, why were efforts made to continue investigating the president? To limit POTUS's ability to maneuver, to blockade him, right? Why wasn't the mandate budget regular updates provided to Congress upon request? To stall for time. You got to let the crime complete, right? And you just go down this whole list. This list is important as we go on. Why? Because it proves a conspiracy. Remember class 1 to 99? Let me show you class 1 to 99. Tell me when you don't see, let me know when you see the connective theory, okay? Aircraft piracy, aircraft sabotage. Remember, 7 out of 10 plane crashes or not, right?
Excellent.
Violence at international airports. Who remembers the Atlanta airport? Right? Crimes against immediate family of all federal officials. We've been seeing that in a big way, haven't we?
Yeah.
Crimes against internationally protected persons. And I didn't pull up that Q post, but remember there are certain people, if there were threats, all hell was going to break loose. That's in a Q post. Not in those words, but crimes against select United States officials. We've seen that coming out, and people are going to jail for this, for the threats, and those are reminders. So, murder for hire, these are all under class 1 to 99. And you can go down this entire list, and what you start to see, you got maritime, you got hostages, terrorist attacks, providing material support to terrorists. What did we determine most of the cartels were? Terrorists. When you come down to international traffic in arms, right? We know that that was happening. Genocide, doesn't that sound like a COVID issue? Right? Notice of appeal, notice of extension, all of these fall under class 1 to 99. Every single one of them. Isn't that interesting? So what you start to see here is that's also a broad category that is used in an indictment. And what is the top topic? If you look up here, this is the Criminal Resource Manual for CRM 1 to 99. And you've got all of this stuff listed that can be used in a conspiracy case. Every bit of it. So keep going. And we end up finding the grand jury instructions, like we just went over with those slides. There's 3 conditions that have to happen. You have to have evidence of an agreement to conspire, right? So there's 11.3, 11.4. The defendant must have willfully joined the agreement. That's 11.4. You name as many people as possible. The defendant must have joined the conspiracy knowing its objective, right? So even if they don't know all the conspirators, the outcome was something they agreed to. It was an overt act, while not required for all conspiracy statutes, may require showing that at least one conspirator committed an act to further the conspiracy. And you saw that. And then liability. And then we get into the Pinkerton test. That happens to be 11.6. Let me show you. So when you come down to the elements of a conspiracy, what you find in 820 is the model language that is used. And you've seen this language before. Whenever you've opened up a conspiracy case indictment, you've seen this language. Mm-hmm. And it tells you how many counts the defendant is charged in, when the conspiracy began, who else may have been involved, and that there are at least one member, and it'll start to lay out the case against that particular defendant or defendants. Okay, keep going. That takes us to post 820. No coincidences, expand your thinking, and it was a security test, according to Q, in post 820. What is that about? Trump had said that if the sanctions against North Korea didn't work, that there was going to be fire and fury. He's used that term a few times. Okay? How does that play into this? What do we know about North Korea? It was a slave state used by the CIA. I don't know if you remember. Do you guys remember the fatigue mountain syndrome? Do you guys?
I don't.
You don't remember that? That's where a mountain in North Korea was collapsed. And they basically said that's because the mountain was tired. And it turns out underneath that mountain was a huge nuclear site.
Right. They'd hollowed it out and done something. Mountains don't
But they called it, rather than say that we took out a nuclear site, they called it fatigue mountain syndrome. We all laughed like crazy on that one. But they tried to go around the sanctions. And as it turned out, Trump he was able to get Kim Jong-un on his side. And that was something that the deep state was really upset about when Trump crossed DMZ into North Korea. So keep going. U.S. imposes more North Korea sanctions. That's that post. Like I said, no coincidences. Expand your thinking. So everything has meaning or purpose. The U.S. imposed the sanctions on North Korea, and Mnuchin talked about them. What are the sanctions? Proposed a list of entities to be blacklisted under separate UN sanctions. So there, we got the UN involved. A move aimed at shutting down North Korea's illicit maritime smuggling activities to obtain oil and sell coal. Does this sound familiar? Doesn't it sound like maybe we had something similar at the UN for Venezuela?
Yep.
Right. North Korea has been developing nuclear-tipped missiles. And in August, Trump threatened to go beyond sanctions by bringing fire and fury like the world has never seen. So we took out that site. Let's keep going. Going back to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to jump back and just point out something to everybody, that because we're talking more about like a grand conspiracy here. So the Pinkerton test 11.6.
Oh, wait. Let me get there. I'm laying it up. I'm showing the grand conspiracy that it's not just domestic, it's international. So just give me a minute, okay? Because I've got, it's up here. Okay. It's up here. So bringing us back to 3716. First indictment unsealed will trigger mass population awakening. Remember, that's 3716 and 3717. So that's two indictments, both of them released at the exact same time on the 19th of December in 2019. So we got two big indictments that we're waiting on, and it will trigger a mass population awakening. It doesn't mean that the population wakens, but it will get their attention. And the Kleinsmith, Sussman, Danchenko is kind of revealed the machine, but it didn't, and people within the community and some people following caught it, and they've been following, but they literally were saying that Durham was a failure because he didn't get any of these convictions except for Kleinsmith, which was a nothing. So this gets important as you keep going on, because this is a New York Times article from November 23rd, 2025. As Trump inquisitors face scrutiny, a divisive figure could play a new role. What is this? This individual is the Judge Cannon, down in Florida, who was a big deal in the Jack Smith stuff. She's the one that finally determined Jack Smith was illegally appointed. Remember?
Mm-hmm. She also took care of Ryan Ralph. She was on that with the assassin. That was her case also.
Yeah, she was involved with the Ryan Roof.
Sorry.
So she's running the courts down in an area that's really important. She's down in Fort Pierce area. And what did we know about Fort Pierce? There's a big grand jury seated down there. It was just seated in January. So it's really important to keep that in mind, because when you're looking at these conspiracy codes, and we now got two that are, looks like one, both of them come out at the same time. I don't know if one triggers another. We don't have an order because they're both put out at the exact same timestamp. That it looks like two big sealed indictments are unsealed. And we've been waiting for this now. We've been waiting for it for a while. So knowing that she's the grand jury seated in her court is a big deal. And this takes us back to now you see why I said to hold off, Eddie. Takes us back to, remember, 11.3 was to determine a conspiracy. So Huber made a sealed indictment. 11.4 it makes 11.3 actionable. What does it do? 11.3 determines there was a conspiracy. 11.4 determines who was in that conspiracy. And 11.6, Huber also made a sealed indictment. What is 11.6? This is where we get into the Pinkerton charge. 11.6 is really important because with that, you have a test that has to be given, right? The Pinkerton charge is where they determine who the co-conspirators are.
That's right.
So in determining the co-conspirators, you then lay out the rest of the conspiracy. So you've got the fact that you have a conspiracy, you have a list of names, but now you're actually in 11.6. So Uma Abedin, we always thought it was Uma Abedin, 11.6/Uma refers to co-conspirators to the crime.
Well, and it also, at the Pinkerton test, 11.6 would be a defendant knew or should have known it may occur as a natural outgrowth of the agreement.
Right.
So, like an example.
Look at the screen. Look at the screen, Eddie, because it's up there.
Well, an example I would put out would be, like, let's say Brennan gives an order to somebody within the CIA, FBI, whatever it is, right? And that person takes the order to enter into evidence the dossier. Okay. Now he's doing it on order, but in knowledge, he would know that would further, right, the conspiracy. Right. The outgrowth of entering that in when it shouldn't have been furthers the conspiracy. He is now a co-conspirator.
Right.
So you capture a lot of deep state that way.
You get the deep state in this. And what's really important, and by the way, Pithy161, thank you for your monthly subscription to Sean's channel. That we are on Sean's personal channel. The Pinkerton liability has there's several prongs, right? There's questions that need to be answered. First, you got to have the affiliative liability, and that is the compliance, a form of accomplice liability where the conspiracy itself is the basis for the liability. So what they're saying is 11.3 is the basis. 11.6 is the accomplice liability where they're connected. Then you got foreseeability. The defendant is responsible for the crimes of a reasonably foreseeable consequence. That's what Eddie was just saying, knew or should have known about the furtherance of a crime. And then you got the sentence. It relies heavily on U.S. federal sentencing. And then it's distinct, and this is a big deal, from aiding and abetting, because it doesn't require that the defendant, and this comes out of 11.4, the defendant doesn't have to know all the players. But it doesn't require that defendant have direct action towards the original conspiracy. They're just a part of it. But based on what they got out of the conspiracy, whether it's money, personal gain, you see where I'm going? They should have known that there was a conspiracy at play. And it goes into, this is a co-conspirator liability, and it looks for, commits a crime that is natural and foreseeable outcome of the conspiracy. All members can be held responsible, even if they didn't agree to a specific conspiratorial act. The principle serves to deter individuals from joining conspiracies, right? And obviously we've got people that they weren't deterred. And so you ask questions, how does the Pinkerton rule influence the accountability? And it goes through these rules. The Pinkerton rules significantly enhances the accountability of co-conspirators by allowing them to be charged with crimes committed by others within the conspiracy. For us normies, that would be a hell of an incentive not to join it. So that means that there were people that were desperate enough, they felt they had no choice but to join it. Okay, I think that gets into the frauds we've been seeing. Remember all of the federal money, the fraudulent money going through the block grant system. If you're an NGO or a billionaire or somebody that's made all that money out of the block grant system, that's a pretty good indicator that keeping Trump out of office and preventing these investigations is their incentive. Yeah. With the idea of trying to block Trump. And then we have to discuss the implications of the rule involving homicide and how it affects the prosecution's approach. We know that there were people killed. We've had people shot in the back twice in Florida. We had CDC people go missing and found dead in a lake. We've had people. We had Brian Kemp's aide, remember, or his daughter's boyfriend, Kelly Loeffler's aide, remember, was killed in Alabama. There's been a number of cases where people have been murdered. So that's going to come into because that was a conspiracy itself.
Would you think Seth Rich would fall under that also?
I absolutely believe that falls under there. Why? There's a Podesta email talking about making an example of that kid. So take it for where it's worth. And we know that it was 2 MS-16 dudes that killed him. Why? Because they were found dead in their car with the gun that matched the ballistics of the gun that shot Seth Rich. So now we got more of a conspiracy because somebody killed those 2 guys in the car. Dead men don't talk. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we balance it out, individual culpability and the collective responsibility. That's the whole 11.6 component. So are we clear on where this is going? So knowing that, where does it connect to Epstein? Let me tell you. In the Epstein files, as they've been coming out, we have noticed that there are many connections between the fraud in California and the Epstein files, where you see a shared pattern of exploitation. We got high-level political and business connections, and you got the misuse of financial systems for personal gain. So between the fraud in California and the Epstein case, which, by the way, is Florida, and there's that grand jury down there. So we see that in the Epstein files, thinking of Rumler, right? There's this financial piece that fits in there. So from the financial fraud, that's kind of like the foundation, I think. We have supposedly Epstein's wealth built on building these complicated funding mechanisms where people were making money or getting out of it. In fact, the Mortimer Zuckerberg thing was about getting out of an investigation. We got the Rothschild getting out of an investigation where there was a lot of money passed, a lot more than you would think. But you can always go back to the early stories of the $270 million Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. That's early on, where they created, and this is going to sound familiar, you ready? Created bogus financial documents. It sounds like the Rothstein Ponzi scheme, doesn't it?
It does. Very much so.
So let me ask a question. If this sounds like the Rothstein Ponzi scheme, was it Epstein that created the bogus financial documents, or the people he was communicating with created the bogus financial documents? Right?
It's a good question.
So I can't imagine you would create a Ponzi scheme to indict yourself. It doesn't fly. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Intentionally, no.
So we got and that's why I brought up the Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. And then this whole thing, all of these complicated financial arrangements are all through the Epstein files. So what does that link to? Look at California with the philanthropy that goes on in California, and knowing that a lot of philanthropy is really money laundering in disguise, right? Mm-hmm. So, and knowing that Epstein used donations to those institutions to gain some sort of legitimacy with those individuals, I think comes into play. And for example, the University of California, LA's neurologist admitting to the fact that he engaged with Epstein over a decade. And out of that, he made $200,000 in donations. So research donations. And then you got other high-profile associates with the Epstein network. So you're starting to see where the fraud in California links to the Epstein investigation and grand jury that's going on in Florida. Are you following it? Mm-hmm. And if anybody in the chat has a question, let me know. But I think you can see the ties, can't you?
I got a question from Sean, and I want to shout out the gold pills real quick.
There's one.
Just fed up with a cookie. Let's go. G Quick with a cookie, Trick Pony with a cookie, Sean Joe with 2 cookies.
Wow, thank you.
Pun Q Rocker 4Q, 217 gold pills, of course. And Pete Quest with a cookie. I've been texting with Sean back and forth.
I'm glad because I can't see the text and do this together.
He says asking how you see this all playing out and moving forward.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
So if you know about the fraud in California and you know about this new grand jury in Fort Pierce with Cannon, we know the grand jury in Fort Pierce is also talking about or dealing with the weaponization of government, which was, that's where Mar-a-Lago comes in, right? That's where the whole idea of the raid comes in Mar-a-Lago, the weaponization designed to keep Trump out of office, and it connects with the Epstein stuff that connects to the fraud through the philanthropic endeavors in California. You can see 2 distinct indictments coming out at the same time. At least I can. Can you? Mm-hmm. By the way,
that's what I was getting at, Feisty.
Uh-huh.
Because on post 3717, which is the first indictment unsealed,
right?
I need to point out that the post is 3717, which is USC.
There's 2.
371. Right. There's 2.
3717 and 3716.
They're both the same date, December 17th.
At the same timestamp.
Which, if you add those numbers up, it's 17.
Yes, you're right.
So you got 17, 17, 17. Now, I don't take it, I kind of differ a little bit. A marker to me is just a signal, right? So marker 9, to me, in my mind, I think you're totally correct, is signaling to jury instructions 11.3, 11.4. Mm-hmm. But it also, if you look it up, it also equals 11.3, which is sexual battery. This is out of the state of Florida. Sexual battery, this covers battery of victims of 12 years of age or older. And then the other one, 11.4, is 12 years age or older, but through coercion or drugging or whatever. So in my mind, it's sending me to Florida, to the original beginning of
so
this.
You're not connecting it to the philanthropic fraud. You're sticking strictly with the sexual trafficking.
No, I think it's just a signal. I'm connecting Epstein with with your fraud, like you're talking about, but with the midterms crossfire hurricane out of Florida, the grand jury. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe.
But that's what I'm getting at. If you've got the fraud in California, which we were told that California was specifically mentioned for a reason, and you know, for example, like with the Olympic Committee, that fraud, they're talking about Epstein and Ghislaine emailing about what they called flirtatious emails. So, I mean, it doesn't dispel what you're saying, but and then Kathleen Rumler, I mean, that's a big deal when you look at the network, because she's also a part of the philanthropy in California. So I do think the money fraud and the Epstein investigation and the weaponization, I think they're all connected. In fact, I've said that.
I absolutely think that.
And when you look at what's going on in California and how big that is, mainly because of the size of California's economy, I think we're looking at a major that will give people pause when those indictments are unsealed. Not just the Epstein one in Florida, or not just the raid on Trump, but connecting it to this massive amount of fraud that goes on within the states, and in particular California, makes a huge entrance on the stage when that's released. Because it forces you to take pause, especially when you look at the hundreds of billions of dollars that are involved, right? And what did Trump say? He commented that he believed our debt could be almost half of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think it might be more. Like it might be more skewed than half. I don't know.
But we've got massive fraud with public officials. I don't know if you recall, but Gavin Newsom's, what was he, chief of staff?
Mm-hmm.
He was indicted for siphoning off $225,000. That's not chump change.
No. And that was his own staff.
That was his own staff. And he had an illicit lifestyle himself. So there's many, too, that, although it's not as overt in the Epstein files, that Epstein was using this to blackmail people. Although I have yet, if anybody's seen it, I have yet to see that is explicitly stated. Everybody is saying that's what he was doing, was blackmailing these people. I don't know that that's true.
Probably was for some, but maybe not all.
I don't know. I haven't seen anything to say yay or nay.
Yeah.
So I've been staying away from that.
But we can look at the emails that are coming out in the Epstein files and absolutely see a pattern of trying to conspire against Donald Trump.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And that also included, and I don't know what's real, what isn't real, who was playing whom, but that's the Bannon stuff. We saw a number of those things. So what I did find interesting, and I brought it up the other night when I was on with Sean, was that Bannon himself, okay, so Netflix was doing a documentary called Surviving Epstein. I showed that the other night. And every one of those victims were part of that, remember?
Mm-hmm.
As they were all a part of World Without Exploitation, or World Wait, or as Sean kept saying, WWE. But as we're looking at that, this World Without Exploitation was funding and very much a part of the Surviving Epstein series that was on Netflix. And Bannon himself was working with Epstein to develop a counter documentary that never aired because Epstein got arrested. And I also pointed out that the court in Florida ordered the unsealing of the 2008 case the day before Epstein did not kill himself. So there's more. That's why I keep telling people there's a lot more to this story, and I'm less inclined to believe Epstein is the perp everybody thinks he is, more inclined to believe he was a counter-intel or counter-op. Does that make sense? I'm sorry?
Bannon put out an official statement today. I just dropped the link if you're interested in it. It's the first time he broke silence on Epstein.
Okay.
I saw it just a little bit ago. It's in the National Pulse. It's interesting. So, because I know everybody's ragging on him right now, and I don't know.
I don't take anybody off the table or put them on. I mean, I don't know either. I mean, that goes for Flynn or anybody.
I'm not taking anybody off the table. Please don't make that assumption, because that's just not the case. I don't think people go on and off a table that arbitrarily. I honestly think, though, that we owe ourselves the intellectual honesty to realize that there's more going on than just this sexual deviance. Right?
For sure.
There's a lot more. In fact, a lot of the emails we've seen has nothing to do with any of that and everything to do with these financial arrangements all through the Epstein files. Right? So Bannon issues a statement on Epstein chat logs. Mm-hmm. Let me make this as big as I can. Trump White House chief strategist Bannon has addressed his appearance in the Jeffrey Epstein files and the upcoming release of his documentary on the deceased pedophile. This was just put out 3 hours ago. Who was involved? Steve Bannon and Jeff Epstein. When and where? February 2026 in the United States. That when and where is Bannon just responded. Remember, I put out a post, last week? Bannon's never talked about this. Why not? He's key quote, "I am a filmmaker and TV host with decades of experience interviewing controversial figures. That's the only lens through which these private communications should be viewed. Except, I have to say, some of the things that were said in those emails are like, he said what? Okay, Bannon intends to release a documentary exposing Epstein this year. Isn't that convenient timing? Like, maybe we finally get the full... What did Trump say on the plane? We'll finally figure out or find out what Epstein was really doing? Wouldn't that be an interesting documentary to hit on the heels of these unsealed indictments?
He says he has more than 50 hours of footage, and he's talking about how you have to get close to your subject.
Yes, and he did.
And then he references Michael Jackson's.
Right. So,
which I found really interesting.
The appearance confirmed the upcoming release of the documentary on the deceased pedophile. Now, let me again do this. This drives me crazy. Epstein is not a convicted pedophile. He was indicted for pedophilia, but he died in prison and was never tried. To this day, he is convicted of 2 counts of prostitution. That's it.
What was to define the 2008.
And then after he died, even though Ghislaine Maxwell had been completely exonerated in 2008, after he died, they then came out, if you recall, Virginia Giuffre saying she was the mastermind behind all of this, even though Ghislaine Maxwell had been completely exonerated. So when they lost their millstone, Jeff Epstein, they then went to Ghislaine Maxwell to continue the millstone around Trump's neck. And I'm telling you, if we focused on the pedophilia, all of this financial stuff gets second billing. And this financial stuff leads directly in to the conspiracy they're trying to cover up. Right? This isn't about... I'm not going to disagree I'm not saying there isn't child trafficking. Absolutely there is. But I pointed this out the other day. We were told there were 500,000 kids missing. We got Tom Holman a little over a year later, telling us he's recovered 30,000 kids. Either he sucks at his job or the 500,000 number was never real. And then we find out in Minnesota, there's an awful lot of ghost kids where there were no kids. They just used phony names to get what? Block grant monies. It's the financial fraud is the cover-up. Do you follow it? Do you see where I'm going with this?
I think it's probably a combination of both.
I honestly think the big deal to me, because of the debt, because of our quality of life, because of the degradation of our society, the big deal is in how systemic the financial fraud is. It goes right down to your dog catcher. I've been saying this for years. It goes right down to your dog catcher. And if it goes right down to your dog catcher, not everybody's diddling kids. I'm not saying kids, that isn't happening. But that financial fraud is what enables people to do the other.
Right.
And so you've got to take that system down. And I think this is where all this comes together.
The red flag comes in for me, Feisty. It's kind of like if I call you a racist, it just shuts you up. If you sit here and you look at other things that Epstein did, then you're a pedophile protector. And it's working like a charm. People they're absolutely not looking as close as what Epstein was involved in as an operator as in his child molestation. That's all they want to focus on. And that's how they shut people down. And that's how they shut people down. I mean, I got hit with it. Sean got hit with it. We made a comment to Rents. I'm just saying, if you immediately attack me with, so you agree with pedophilia. No, I never said that. I mean, that's an abhorrent thing to say, to be very honest. But when you recognize that without the money, that couldn't have happened, and then you start to see just how systemic that financial fraud is, and if you take that down, you end a major rat line. The U.S. is the largest consumer of child pedophilia, child sex trafficking. So if we know this, and you remove the financial incentive,
by holding people accountable, I think that's where we go. Where does that end up, though? It ends up with some very high-profile people in this country. Millionaires, billionaires, big business, high-end, high-up in government, political officials. We all also know that the majority of the arrests, according to Q, are in D.C. at the highest levels of government. So we're not talking about just one thing here at all. But when you look at the USAID, the size and scope of the fraud through USAID, hopefully people are starting to expand that thinking to realize one enables the other. And that's my point there.
Real quick, shout out to Belushi, who rated our stream over on Pilled. Thank you so much, sweetie. It's good to see you. Welcome in, everybody. We're having just a lovely discussion here.
Yes, thank you. So Bannon's link to this. Why is Bannon doing a counter video? He's publicly called Epstein a monster, but he's doing a counter video to the surviving Epstein. Do you see the disconnect? I mean, he's got 50 hours of footage with Epstein, but you got a surviving Epstein documentary out there. If that was accurate, you wouldn't need a counter documentary, right? There's more to this story, and that's coming out this year. How convenient. That timing is interesting to me.
So far, I still maintain that Bannon more than likely was sent out to embed.
Yes.
And you have to embed, like, it's known that Epstein hated Trump, so you can't go up, like...
Or so we're told.
So we're told. But
right.
The public firing, then you're looking at these text messages and things that are right after. It's very convenient.
And I have to be real honest with you. I'm looking at these text messages, and I'm thinking, these don't sound genuine. They sound
Right.
like they're designed to entice somebody else's response.
Right.
To me. None of it sounded genuine, either for Bannon, the things from Epstein. And I pointed out the other day the whole Louis Freeh connection, right? I still hold that there's a major investigation going on. And it's interesting that we now have a grand jury. When do you have a grand jury seated? When you got probable cause of something, right? And then you present your probable cause. They go through all the documents and determine, is there something here for an indictment? That's the purpose of the grand jury. You got to start with probable cause of something. So there's some things happened that created the need and the authority to establish or seat a grand jury.
So how do you see this rolling out to the public that they will be able to process and understand?
This is my opinion. Okay, I have to caveat that because I get hit every time with it. But in my opinion, I don't think the public. Let me back up. For them to tell us that there's a grand jury seated means something's close already. You don't announce a grand jury. The secrecy of a grand jury is sacrosanct. Okay? Now the world knows there's a grand jury in Fort Pierce. How hard is it to figure out who may be on that jury or put that jury at risk? So the fact that they told us in January that they were seating a grand jury, there's more to that story. And we're closer to the end than people think.
Oh, good.
Okay? That's my opinion on that. They're not starting fresh. So that said, you release, if I'm correct and if Eddie's correct, and we both came to the same conclusion, 2 indictments released at the same time, that's a shock and awe.
Right.
Well, and Brennan came out and said he was subpoenaed to that grand jury.
Yes,
we know that.
Yes, Brennan was subpoenaed to that grand jury.
Okay.
Before we were told it was officially seated, by the way. That was last year. We were told officially it was seated in January. So I'm just saying, when you've got something of this magnitude, and you're talking about, and I've been saying all along, you got the 3 sides of the triangle: weaponized social morals and values, weaponized financial system, weaponized government. If you got the three sides of the triangle figured out, and you've got the money and the weaponization of government already figured out in California and Florida, and you release that, and you can see where the whole tranny thing became a part of weaponization, right? That's social morals and values. When you start looking at that, and you can then intuitively process the idea that they threw everything they had to keep Trump out of office, that's massive.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're months away, not years.
Yeah, we're not
months
years.
away.
No.
I mean, they've got to be moving quick this year. We've got midterms, we've got election fraud. So, I mean,
Well,
it feels like they have to move soon.
let me ask this question. If you know everything's connected, and we know at least since 2017, Huber was involved, and we knew some of his indictments. We got Durham in some of his indictments. We've had other investigations that have been going on, but everything's connected, right? That means, what are they doing? They're taking all of those investigations, putting the connective theory together, and people are going down as the planners, the co-conspirators, and the absolute crimes that were committed. So you've got massive RICOs and conspiracy charges coming. I love Duppy's Ricola. It's got to be close.
Gotta be.
I wonder what the State of Union. I mean, obviously he's going to talk a lot about the economy and stuff, but that's next week, right?
Yeah, the 26th. Hold on. I think it's the 26th or 24th. I put it in my
24th.
I put it in my chat last night because it satisfied an itch. Just so you know.
I'm sure ARM will be live covering it for those so interested.
Okay, he is February 24th at 9 p.m. That also matches 3825. What happens when the mass population witnesses no political spin, fake news cannot censor, so to address?
Right.
Okay, so that matches the fact that's 3825. He's delivering the so to. What if part of what he delivers is the conspiracy that's being uncovered?
I mean,
what if he connects some dots?
If he announces something on the State of the Union, because he does have all the television on,
right?
Like they're covering it. So I mean, but they might cut away. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time they've cut away. But what I'm getting at is he's not going to announce the unsealing of an indictment.
No,
but he can definitely talk to the unsealing of an indictment, right? And wouldn't people have questions? So could it be within the next week and a half? Yeah, today is the 16th. We're talking 8 days from now.
that's tight.
Yeah.
And
I don't know when it happens.
That on the 20th, you're going to have an opinion day out of the Supreme Court.
Right.
The 24th and the 25th will also be an opinion day.
Which is very interesting. Well, the 24th will hit before the SO2.
Do we know which ones they're for sure giving an opinion on? I mean, I know there's several we're anticipating, but
you'll never know that.
I don't think we're going to know that answer.
okay.
I honestly don't think we're going to know that answer. Maybe after the dust settles, we start getting some things filled in, but in the immediate term, no, I don't think so. It would be great. I wouldn't mind it.
The tariff thing soon.
The tariff thing, well, we're hoping that's part of the tranche of opinions that comes out on the 20th, 24th, and 25th.
Mm-hmm.
It should be.
It should be.
If you remember, the tariff question was asked in an expedited fashion. So it should be coming out. We're kind of surprised it hadn't come out. Mm-hmm. But here's an interesting thing. February 6th was the deadline for signing up for ACH through CBP. What are they responsible for? When you seek a refund or whatever from the what is it? Not tariffs. The oh, come on, what is the word for it? When you bring something into the country, there's a fee you have to pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
An import tax.
Import tax. When you square that up and seek your refunds, if you're not in ACH after February 6th, you can no longer, because the government, because of Trump's executive order from last March, government no longer gives out checks. Everything's by ACH. So the tariffs, the import tax, all of the duties that come in, all of that now has to go through ACH. One of the things I looked at was the amount of fraud through that system for the import duties and taxes. And there is a huge problem with double and triple filing because they didn't have a cohesive system for refunding those monies. So now with ACH, there's an absolute way to track refunds and make sure that there's not double and triple filing. So there's another major fraud there with hundreds of millions of dollars again in that system.
I can't even comprehend the amount that we're trying to claw back. You know?
Mm-hmm. I don't... Okay, I see the question coming in. What if Bannon was the one who was sent in to coordinate the whole Epstein didn't kill himself strategy? Okay, the court, not Bannon, released the requirement to unseal the 2008 documents. Now, I'm just going to point out something. There was extensive activity to prevent those documents from coming out. Immediately, the people named in those files primarily came out and said, and Trump even talked about it, that his concern about unsealing these documents is there were a lot of innocent people whose lives could be ruined, and we're seeing that just because their name is in there somehow. But there was a lot of activity. Those documents didn't finally come out until 2020 after Epstein did not kill himself. But the court ordered the release of that information the day before Epstein did not kill himself. So it tells me, and we all know this, who thinks Epstein is still alive? Almost everybody. Why? Because, first of all, Barr's response was just not somebody, I'm so angry. I mean, it was like, what? His response was not somebody angry. So they got him out of there. They definitely got him out of there. And why would that be important? It's the gotcha that I was telling you about the other night. There's part of that in there. Because as long as he's not convicted of pedophilia, and we have an example of that with Ghislaine Maxwell, which is a malicious prosecution case from the jump. But if you got Ghislaine Maxwell, you look at what happened with her. She was not allowed to defend herself. We know that this is a tried and true tactic because Trump couldn't defend himself. So what makes anybody think Epstein would have been able to defend himself? So what happens is, as he's indicted, he's jailed, pending trial for pedophilia, but he never came to trial. So he's not a convicted pedophile. That's an amazing gotcha, by the way. It shuts down all those civil cases. So what did they start doing? They started going after the banks for daring to have an Epstein bank account. I showed that the other night. And I showed you how corrupt lawyers were winning these monstrous awards, remember?
Mm-hmm.
I only showed 2. There's many. So here we go. I don't know who in the Epstein files, nor do I give a rip, to be very honest. I don't know who in the Epstein files was actually committing a crime. I know this, that there was no credible list or information leading to a prosecution of anybody in the files. And Pam Bondi didn't talk about existing investigations. She said pending investigations. The fraud is the people who are complaining, I think, the people saying they're victims. And I went through that whole victim thing the other night.
Right. That was great.
because they obviously didn't present themselves as victims before the DOJ, which means they're not in the National Victim Database.
The public is not going to deal well if they just, I mean, they're going to be great that they attacked the fraud, but it's not, I don't see them letting it go for the second part of the Epstein. You know what I mean? I don't see them letting it go. So how about the Q post where the children will unite them? It's something to that
I'm going to tell you right now, when you go back to 2020 and what California did with the COVID thing, they locked children down. They bought all those masks from China. They were arresting people going to church, but they primarily went after the children in school. I think the crimes against children is still real.
Okay, so you think it has more to do with that and not the trafficking?
I think there's a trafficking piece to it. I'm not going to disagree. But you got to look at this total fixation on the kids. And I think the vaccine schedule, the COVID policy with kids, they were forcing babies to wear a mask. Remember?
Yeah.
We had children that were getting sick because they had to wear the same mask all day long and it was filled with their own spittle. So there is a big issue there between the vaccine schedule, between the COVID policy, the fact that they were using the programs for children at risk, marginalized children, the food and daycare and all of that, and there's that much fraud in there. There were children who needed services that weren't getting the services. On top of that, remember, CPS takes custody of children and that's another major payout. A major funding wheel for states. Go look it up in your own states. It's a line item.
Yeah.
That acts as a quota.
We have a gold pill question or two. Let me.
Okay.
Let's see. So Ohio Kimmy, thank you so much for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for another cookie. Some guy named SeanANQN gave us some
who's
cookies.
that?
He's got some questions. He says, what if Bannon was the one who was sent in?
I already spoke to that.
Epstein. The second one.
I don't think Bannon is the one that coordinated that. I think that came right out of Barr's office. And I think Bannon is the bullhorn, but I don't think it was Bannon that coordinated that.
Bannon's job is to create narrative and craft.
Right.
That's his job.
I think it was a convenient, yes.
Yeah, his job is the narrative. That's what he's super good at with War Room. Sean's second question. So again, if Trump saw a need to keep Epstein alive, would he want to insert someone into his orbit in order to culminate the strategy to keep him alive? If so, could that be Bannon who was sent in?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, Bannon's movie, what is it? The documentary, what is it? It's counter to the Surviving Epstein documentary on Netflix.
Yeah. I don't think it's...
What is a counter to the Surviving Epstein?
Right.
It's obviously telling you a different story. And I do think the whole Epstein narrative, especially when you understand the Rothstein Ponzi scheme, I do think the fraud in all of these states, the systemic fraud that we're seeing uncovered, is just amazing. And I think that's where California comes in. Because you can see, when you put all of this together, you can see how everything else would connect. And what are they trying to cover up? The fact that they were involved in such egregious financial fraud. That would have them extreme COVID policy, that would create the mail-in ballots, that would create an election steal, that would create the need to try Trump endlessly for crimes he never committed. You can see how because what was at stake? What's the biggest thing to be at stake? As you sit here trying to figure out how to put food on your table, remember every election comes down to the kitchen table, right? Well, when you're seeing $1 trillion worth of fraud out of your own state,
Yeah.
That gets people paying attention.
That gets them motivated.
Right.
That definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There's another question in here about Judge Janine Pirro. It's not necessarily a question, but they're noting, I'm assuming because we were talking earlier about there being a lot of people high level in D.C.
Right.
Excuse me. And I agree. I do think Janine was put there very strategically. She's a hardliner. And
Ed Martin.
Her record is amazing.
They call him Eagle Ed for a reason. Notice who Ed Martin's talking to. Notice who he's talking to. You've got election fraud. You've got financial fraud. He had the Clinton financial whistleblowers in his office. You've got all these people, the Tina Peters stuff. All these people have been coming into his office. And what are you dealing with? It's all the frauds. So he's Eagle Ed. He's keeping the focus on D.C. In the meantime, you got the grand jury in Florida. I think he's actually an investigative wheel because they can't get an honest grand jury or trial in D.C. So they use the nexus of the Mar-a-Lago raid because that's still weaponization to hold it in that district.
It's perfect, and it forces them into that. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Glad he's not Falcon. Duppy! I'm going to have Duppy come in as a regular so that he doesn't just do his little...
He's such a fun one.
I know he is. I have fun.
I enjoy Duppy quite a bit. I really do. He's always been very generous to me with his time and expertise when I've had questions.
When I needed somebody on, yes. Oh, somebody's asking about my dove. You hear my dove in the background. I have a dove named Koo. It's a peace dove.
Aw.
And,
somebody was asking about a dog, and it's probably my dog.
My dog's outside. You wouldn't hear my dog.
It's my little one.
What's funny about my dove is he literally drives Willow crazy. He chases Willow all over the house.
We need video of this.
My husband, we tried to get video a couple times. We will keep trying. But
keep trying. I would love that.
he flies right in front of Willow, starts cooing, and then Willow will try to run off, and he runs right after Willow. Willow goes under the couch. He goes under the couch. We've watched them. They go all over this level of the house. It's hysterical. The cat will not harm that dove, but the dove torments the hell out of the cat. It's just incredible to watch.
Let's see. Based Army, Based Amy is rating our channel.
Very nice.
You. Welcome in, everybody.
So I wanted to tie this to something. You got the domestic issue. And you've got the foreign component. Mm-hmm. I don't know if a lot of people caught it, but last Wednesday, I believe, Jason Smith of the House Ways and Means Committee had a massive hearing. It was a 4-hour hearing on charitable organizations, 501c3, 4 and 5.
Okay.
With the sole purpose, Ways and Means, by the way, is the committee that writes tax law. And what was interesting to me was who was in that hearing. I'm going to try to pull some up. Where is it? I have all kinds of information open. That isn't it. I don't know where it is. I gotta find it. So anyway, what they were talking about, here it is right here. Mm. In this hearing is the full committee hearing on foreign influence in American nonprofits. It is a fantastic hearing, by the way. Fantastic. It is 4 hours long. You can watch it on YouTube. It was on February 10th. Started at 10, ended about almost 2:30. So what was the case? Well, it comes down to the witnesses, these individuals. So one of the first witnesses is the Americans for Public Trust. Her name is Caitlin Sunderland. And I'm just going to show something to you. No, she didn't talk about that. Okay. But she's talking about highlights of 5 foreign charities spending almost $2 billion to fuel extreme policies in the United States. Who does she talk about? Let me make it bigger. The Quad Rapture Climate Foundation. It's founded in 2019. We got Greg Skinner and Susil Setia. They steered $530 million into, what are they? They're London based. So she's talking about millionaires and billionaires. Americans for Public Trust is a watchdog group, just so you know. Mm-hmm. The other person that came in, his name is Scott Walter. He's from Capital Research. You noticed I use Influence Watch as my source material? By the way, great place to do some research. Influence Watch is run by Capital Research Center, just so you know.
Okay.
So we have Scott Walter in there talking about, and he starts talking about Neville Royce Singham and other billionaires, by the way, but a lot of talk about Neville Royce Singham. What they've started doing is showing how these foreign entities are funneling dark money through our NGOs. That's coming out, I'm sure of it, is going to be the big story out of California, just so you know. So there's Capital Research Center. Another person that came in, his name is Bruce Dubinsky. Again, he's a forensic accountant who was hired to look into some of this stuff. Again, he's talking about Neville Royce Singham. Very interesting. And he's a forensic accountant. When you want to understand that, think of the Clinton Foundation whistleblowers. They're forensic accountants. And they uncovered all the inconsistencies in the Clinton tax records. So he's hired to do this. And then we've got a case that he was a part of. Now, isn't this interesting? Declaration of Bruce Dubinsky in what? The Madoff case. So he knows his forensic accounting stuff. Okay? We got another person in here, Scott Walter again. I already pulled that up, but he, like I said, he's Neville Royce Singham. And then we go to Influence Watch. These are the cases, and I can do a refresh because it's a few days old. But these are stories they've put out. Animal Farm turns 80, remember the Communist Party? Isn't that an interesting story to highlight on your page? It was put out in August. Okay. Then there's another person that's brought in because, you got to have a wacko on the committee hearing, right? The person that's brought in is Robert Weissman. He, of course, says this whole idea of money laundering is baloney. That's his. Foreign influence in American nonprofits, unmasking threats from Beijing and beyond. And he points directly at China. So Public Citizen is a lobbying and advocacy organization created by the what? Green Party. They're not Communist Party, but close. That's the one. Their key candidate was Ralph Nader. So I'm just going through this because now, as you look at this hearing, you now set up to see an entertaining hearing with, uncustomarily, a lot of information conveyed. Okay. Like I said, it's a 4-hour hearing. If I could even have pulled clips, but there were too many to pull, it would take us another an hour and a half at least to go through those gotchas, right? The cool clips. So I wanted to point that out. Why is that important? What I've been trying to tell people for the longest time is and I'm going to pull that up because I don't know how many people have gone to Bad Boys. Up on Bad Boys, we find out there's 629,288 sealed indictments. It didn't increase this month. The last increase was about 3 weeks ago, maybe almost 4 weeks ago. There was another 1,000 added. So it's slowed down. The state with the most sealed indictments happens to be California. Don't you find that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And Arizona. Where's the 9th district? Right? And then, of course, Texas comes in third. So anyway, I wanted to point this out because what you find, this is the leaderboard. Texas, California, Arizona, top 3. Then I wanted to show this. This is public corruption. The top state for public corruption right outside of D.C. is Virginia. California for public corruption is number 5. So in California, you're not dealing with public officials as much as you're dealing with philanthropy.
Right.
The 501c3
shell game.
Right. The shell game.
Where is Delaware on that ranking? Just out of curiosity, since we're talking about NGOs.
Let's see if I can get it to pop up. To do that, you gotta get in here.
It's so teeny.
Oh, wait a minute. Delaware, it's 15 public corruption case. Let me go backwards to the full board. Okay, and then I'll make it bigger. They're red, so they're low, actually. Total cases, 3,903. So what this is telling you, and this is what I wanted to bring this up for, public corruption is real.
Oh, yeah.
Public corruption aids in the systemic nature of the fraud. But what's mostly at risk here are the racketeering cases that involve philanthropy. So you've purchased public officials who look the other way while you pass your money through without them seeing it. And I think it's not enough to go after a governor. It's not enough to go after a sitting Congress rat. That's not enough. They're purchasing the rite of passage by making sure you keep your eyes focused on another direction. Look over there. Don't look at what we're doing over here.
Yeah, go all
Which
the way
is
down.
why I think the Jason Smith case hearing was so important, because what are they doing? They're looking at those cases, those situations within the tax code that need buttoning up.
Well, and that'll tie into the migration also, because so many of those NGOs are taking so much money in
They're
trafficking.
taking money for that.
Oh my gosh, all over the place.
And what did we find out in Minnesota? A lot of these kids were ghost children.
Right.
They're not real. So that's why I'm saying I think one of the big indictments is that piece to it. I'm not saying trafficking isn't real. What I'm saying is, if you don't take down the system that is used to make the money flow, we're not going to get anywhere.
And that goes for everything from voter fraud on down. If you don't choke the money supply out, we're never going to really make progress in change. They'll just, that's why I think taking down the NGOs is so important, because that's the method they've been using, which is why they screamed so badly when they cut off USAID.
Right. That's why they did scream, and they tried to fight it. But what was unique about that is USAID was formulated with an executive order, so it could be stricken with an executive order. The law that had Kennedy sign that executive order didn't specify how.
Yeah. Kind of. I always assumed he meant it for something different than what it became, because he was not a fan of the CIA stuff, particularly at that time. So
No, he wasn't.
He was not at all. And then,
But I think it was Congress. Remember when that was done? That when we got the McCarthy era, right in our memories from the 50s. It was a unique way of establishing a nonprofit a public nonprofit, USAID, that Congress said, hey, executive branch, establish a way for these monies to go to these needs.
Bless your heart, honey. Do you need
I
a sip
forgot
of-
to bring my water in. I'm sorry. Nevertheless, they established the law that required the executive branch to act on, and then Kennedy set up the agency, USAID. So the law itself didn't tell Kennedy what to do, only that he needed a way of managing all these appropriated funds. Oh, thank you. My husband
It's a little long.
Only that he had to have a way of handling these appropriated funds.
I think we lost Eddie.
Yeah, it looks like we did. He said he may have to go early. I don't know what happened. So in doing that, he set up the executive order that established USAID. So when they tried to fight him in court over ending it, it's like he had the prerogative. It's an executive order. All he had to do was retire the executive order, which is what he did. Then Doge was another funny one because that was a system set up by Obama.
Yep.
So they couldn't fight him on Doge because all he did was use the Obama setup. We tagged it or renamed it Doge.
Sean saying, didn't Kristi Noem just announce cutting the funding off to the NGOs?
Yes.
They've had multiple announcements on that.
We've already seen
I know, but
legal activity because the colleges, which have their own foundations, are screaming about not getting federal dollars. We've already seen where the Supreme Court is likely to accept that as a fact. So, I can't even begin to underscore the fact that the public corruption through philanthropy is key to unraveling everything else.
Yeah.
I've been saying for years, you've got to deal with what is the cornerstone. It's the money. Without the money, you can't do anything else. Okay, S. Jones is saying, Feisty Cat and Free for All to Learn, great show. Missing SeanANQN, gotta run. I have prep to do. God bless you, Feisty, for all your great digging. Thank you, S. Jones. I appreciate hearing that.
Show in about an hour. That's what she's referencing. So I've got to run. Yeah.
Well, we've got only a couple of minutes left. So
Okay.
this show ends at 6.
Gotcha.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here in Sean's stead.
I didn't realize Eddie was going to be on, and I didn't mean to overstep. I
didn't know how long Eddie was going to be able to be on. I wanted him to come in because he and I were having this conversation today.
And he was wonderful, very knowledgeable.
Yeah. Well, he's been digging for quite a while as well.
Yeah.
What's really cool with Eddie, just so you know, he's a frequent contributor to my nightly chats. And we usually disagree. And then he'll start digging. And I'll go, oh, yeah, you were right. But he'll add more. We'll actually, the absolute end story becomes a lot more robust because he can't help himself. He's got to dig. So I keep telling him how much I appreciate him. Because even if we disagree, Keystone, thank you. Tawanda said it. Keystone, not corner. Yeah. Keystone is money. It will always be money. Without it, none of this system works.
Gotcha.
So anyway, Eddie is one of those treasured contributors to my chat. He doesn't take everything for granted. Feisty is not the be all end all. He double checks, triple checks everything I'm saying, but it always becomes a more robust theory in the end.
I love that.
So I love that. I love the collaborative nature. So he's become, and then when he connected the Florida grand jury, it was like, oh my God, that answers the 37, 16, and 17 right there. That answers it.
That answers
the connection. And I'm sitting here looking at, okay, so what is the connection between Epstein and the fraud and it's through the philanthropy. And when you look through the Epstein files, what is it all about? These are philanthropists.
You're right.
It's like, there we go. There we go. So I'm going to ask a question in the chat, and please feel free yourself to add to this. Is it making more sense what we're watching based on the information I've been trying to provide? How about for you, Maribel?
For me?
Yeah.
I was not part of the Q boards. So I didn't really come to the research end until 2020, and I didn't really look at the boards until later in that year. So I was never part of that group. So I always have that 40,000-foot view of just strictly looking at the posts, because that's all I did. I just looked at the posts, and then I'm good at disseminating news. I'm good at understanding the narrative of the news, not necessarily which it's good because it's different than what you do. So
yeah, I dig. My and I've been doing this almost from the beginning. It's not enough to tell you what the news is. For me, I need to tell you how we got there.
Right.
And so my digging is not enough to tell you the machine. I got to show you how the machine was built, what it's been doing, so that you could understand the news that's coming out and how it's being taken apart. That's what I do.
Yes.
Whereas people say, I do the connective theory. Right?
Yes. We all do different pieces, and I think it makes the content that we create so much more robust.
But the question being, what I've given you, doesn't it give you a clearer picture
Yes.
of what we can expect?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what, I cannot say these names. I don't know if you can. Adenois. I cannot say your name, sorry. Absolutely, the information is helpful. And Sean goes, hence feisty digs.
That's good. Hence feisty digs, yes.
It's true.
I've been trying to bounce between the two chats and scan and just keep up with it.
So I am really thrilled that you were able to join me today, and I don't see any real questions that are coming through. Hopefully, I've presented enough for people to understand that we're in a different place, right? Where there's we are definitely beyond the initial investigations. Now I'm seeing investigations coming together.
Right.
It's not enough to talk about onesie twosies now. We are now talking about a situation where
Massive.
the massive amount of investigations leads us to how we get to talk about all of it, right? How we get to show that not only is everything connected, but because it's all connected, we're starting to see how they played with each other, how the different parts played. Hopefully, I was able to do that today. Hopefully, I was able to show that.
I hope everybody got that. I did. I walked in. I didn't know what I was walking into. So.
Right? Well, I didn't give you any preconceived notions. You said, hi, are you okay? And it's like, come on in.
I was going to listen in the chat because I knew Sean was having internet issues, and I thought, oh, well, maybe they need help. So,
well, what we did is Ash set up Sean's channel, sent me all the keys. I set up my OBS so that we could still run the show through Sean's channel, because this is where I'm not on ARM anymore. You know that, right? The show's not on ARM anymore. So we doing it through Sean's channel, and then now I get to do my show on my own on Sean's channel, and hopefully I don't screw it up to where his channel gets screwed up.
I think it'll be fine.
I'm sorry?
It'll be fine.
We'll work on it. Hopefully, though, everybody, thank you so much for everything. Just so we leave on time, it would be the first time, because when Sean's on, we always go 2.5 hours. I don't know how to raid, just so you know. So make your way over, because he always goes to Johnny after he's done with this. So make your way over to Johnny's channel. I don't know how to raid. So you're going to have to do that. And any of the gold pills, they're going to have to sit there until somebody else releases them, because I don't.
They did release them.
Huh?
A few minutes ago, somebody released it on Pilled, and they've been getting their scratchings.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Thank you, whoever did that, because I don't know how to do any of that. I'm thankful I got to the point where I can even operate part of OBS. So that's a big deal for me.
Yes, I'm not an OBS person.
With that, thank you so much for joining me. You helped me out a lot. I don't do well by myself. I love the discussion. So,
I get more out of it.
Someday I'm going to figure out who could be my co-pilot. I know Sean is getting overburdened, so.
Gotcha.
Wait a minute. Feisty, in 2 sentences, how do we tell others that Epstein is more than pedophilia? Quite frankly, in 2 sentences, most of the emails that are coming out in the Epstein files are about the financial arrangements that were being made, not pedophilia. In fact, I've seen no credible information of pedophilia so far. I've seen inference, but nothing credible. And Todd Blanche said there's no credible information for that. And Pam Bondi just said last week there's pending investigations, which means there's fraud coming out. So I know that's 3 sentences, but hopefully that works.
Cairo Kathy, I hope I'm saying that right. Thank you so much for the phone over on Pilled. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That said, have a great day, everybody. I am going to figure out how to get to close my camera and get to my ending. So take care, everybody. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, by the way. F monitor. That's Saturday. I'll just play that again.
Whispers in the static, questions in the fire. The veil is torn and the seeker never tired. eyes of flame, unmasking the players in the shadowed game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shakes. She names the unspoken,